They're not going to leave you if they feel like they have a better situation with you than they would have on their own.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
And a fine how do you do to each of you, as my good friend Tim Anderson often says. Dustin Harris hanging out with you in the podcast chair for another full episode. Today we're going to talk about something that comes up quite often, and that is the idea of trainees and the fear of them becoming your competition. I want to pause and remind you that we're sponsored by DataMaster today. DataMaster is saving appraisers time. I love DataMaster, folks. I go in quite often. I hit the button. Bam. Everything's done. I'm telling you, folks, 30, 40 minutes is saved by a touch of a button. DatamasterUSA.com is where you find out more. DatamasterUSA.com. And we are sponsored, of course, by the great Alamode. Alamode is, of course, saving appraisers tons of time, tons of money by their wonderful tools that are out there. Check them out. Go to alamode.com. That's ALAMODE, or you can call them at 800-ALAMODE. Finally, we are sponsored by Working RE magazine. Working RE is helping appraisers to learn more about what's going on in their world. Check them out. Go to workingre.com. Again, workingre.com. All right, folks, I want to, this was prompted by a Facebook post a while ago. It was one I saved and went back to later on. But the question was asked. It was a good friend of mine, by the way, that asked the question. And it was not asked the way this is normally asked, so kudos to the individual that asked this question. Instead of saying, hey, how do you keep your trainees from becoming your competition, which is what most appraisers look at, and most appraisers ask, unfortunately, which I think, by the way, is a very pessimistic way to look at it. This individual was much more positive, much more optimistic when she asked the question, and I'm not going to ask the exact question that she did, but it was similar to this, that how do you make sure that your trainees are loyal to you? How do you instill that loyalty moving forward? Excellent question, by the way, folks. And this is a question that I dealt with in many, many aspects, in many, many realms. One of the realms that I talk about this in is the training program that I have out there on my website about how to become an appraiser. There's a long course that someone can take that if you are struggling trying to find a mentor, that is a course for you, folks. I can almost, I always have to use the word almost, but I almost don't need to say almost. I can almost guarantee you that you're going to find a mentor after you take that course. With the ideas that you'll find in that course, it will blow your mind how quickly you can find somebody that will work with you. If you've struggled trying to find somebody to work with you as a want-to-be appraiser, please take that course. I promise you, you will have some great results, including finding a mentor out there. I'm just sure of it. But in that course, I talk about this very thing. One of the fears that most appraisers have, and it's unfortunate, but it's true. Most appraisers have this fear of competition. It is a scarcity mindset. It is easy to slip into, but I highly recommend that appraisers start to train their minds to think more on the productivity side of things, more on the abundance side of life, right? I hate to boil it down to two ways, but there's two ways to look at life, right? There's two ways to look at any problem. It's from the scarcity mindset or it's from the abundance mindset. And I'll tell you, folks, I've been on both sides of that fence. And I will tell you this, I would much, much rather be on the abundance side of things. I would much rather have an outlook that says, hey, Dustin, life is good, and it can only get better. I am absolutely a firm believer. Not that I don't have my struggles, not that I don't have my issues and my problems. I mean, look at me, right? Pretty easy to spot. But I love life. And I tend to look more on the positive side, the side of abundance, that there's not an infinite amount of pieces of pie out there, but that we can grow the pie, and we together, combined, can help each other to realize some great, great abundance in our life. I'm a firm believer in that. Now, I'm getting off in the weeds just a titch, but not fully. This idea that I'm not going to train somebody because that somebody is eventually going to become my competition, I feel, is very, very much a scarcity mindset. Now, I am not saying that there's not some truth in that. I am not saying that I haven't experienced that myself. I've taken somebody in more than one occasion and trained them up from knowing nothing about, not even knowing how to spell appraisal, to being a full-fledged certified residential appraiser who I would trust to go out and do amazing things. And I've seen those individuals become my quote unquote competition. Now, I also, you notice I hesitated there, right? Because I really don't see it that way. I'm trying to use the language that I've heard other appraisers use, but that is not the language that I would typically use. Even for the people that have been trained by me and now quote unquote compete, if you will, or work in my same area, work for some of my same clients. I'm sorry, I just don't see that as they stole my clients, they stole my area, they became my competition. If I run into them at Walmart, I'd gladly shake their hand, ask them how they're doing, wish them all the best. Hey, are you as busy as I am? Well, good for you. That's the kind of relationship that I have with these individuals. I don't feel stiffed. I don't feel like they stab me in the back. Now, are there things that I look back on and go, hey, I wish I had done that better. I wish they had done that better. Sure, of course. I mean, wouldn't you do that in your own relationships, in all your relationships? There's always things that we could have done better. But folks, I think this idea that we look at life from a scarcity mentality is only hurting us. And when I hear appraisers, when I ask them, hey, why don't you train? Why don't you bring on a trainee? Well, I just don't want to train my competition, Dustin. Folks, come on. Really? Now, again, does it happen? Of course it does. I mean, this is not an unfounded idea. But folks, I promise you, you're going to get much, much further in life looking at your business from an abundance mentality than you will over a scarcity mentality. And this idea that when we train somebody that it's inevitable that they're going to become our competition, I just think is a scarcity mentality. Now, I love the way that the question was posed on social media by my friend, another appraiser in another state, who said, hey, what can we do to instill loyalty to our trainees? I love that question. It's a much, much better and fresher approach to this question. And folks, there are things that you can do. Now, I want to make it very, very clear. You can never, ever avoid the quote unquote problem completely. You can do everything that I'm going to suggest today and still have somebody put out their own shingle and still have somebody leave you and quote unquote compete with you. You can do everything that I will tell you about in just a few minutes and still quote unquote have that problem. Now, you notice that I'm saying quote unquote a lot. I'm saying that because, again, this is the language that I hear my peers use. It's not the language that I use. I don't see the other individuals that I trained out there as my competitors. I don't see it as a problem. Okay, but I know that it's easy to slip into that realm and see it that way. And by the way, I want to make it very clear. The topic of the conversation today, I'm not going to be foolish and say, you know what, they're just not my competition because I just don't choose to use it to see it that way. No, I'm talking about things you can do to keep them, as the poster on Facebook said, to keep them loyal to you. Now, again, making it very, very clear. You're never going to be able to complete the process and guarantee that they won't go out on their own. Absolutely impossible to do that. Because people have their agency and people can do what they do. But I want to share with you 3 or 4 things when we get back to the break that I would highly recommend that you look at and highly recommend that you do moving forward if you want to keep people loyal to you. Speaking of being loyal, I've been loyal to a la mode for, I don't know, close to 30 years now. Literally, I'm going on 3 decades with them. Absolutely an amazing company. Folks, I know they've changed hands. I know there's been changes over the years. I know there's things that maybe don't work perfectly and that you want. Folks, they're still the best out there. They're still the best value out there. If you're with any other company, you need to check them out if you are an efficiency guy like I am. If you're an efficiency girl like I'm not a girl, but I am an efficiency person. And if you're one of those people, I highly recommend you check out Alamode, ALAMODE.com or 800 Alamode. Speaking of efficiency, how would you like to save 30, 35, 40, 45 minutes on every, yes, I said every report that you do? DataMaster will help you to do that. They are an amazing company that will take the data that you have to enter or have to pay somebody else to enter, and they'll put it in there with a touch of a button, folks. DataMaster or Datamaster, USA.com. Datamaster or DatamasterUSA.com. Finally, we're sponsored by Working RE Magazine. Working RE is helping you to know more about what's going on in the world of appraisal. That's right. They stand for Working Real Estate. That's you. You work in real estate. And this is the magazine for you. Working RE. If you have not been to workingre.com lately, I highly recommend that you check them out. Go to workingre.com and sign up for their free, yes, I said free newsletter. And you will find that you will receive all kinds of information to your inbox that will help you stay on top of what's going on in your industry. And by the way, there's a lot of change coming to our industry in the next couple of years. Working RE will be there to guide you through it. Workingre.com, workingre.com. All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Dustin Harris hanging out with you once again. We're talking today. Well, we're talking about loyalty. I know the title, the working title of the podcast today is about competition, but again, I think that is a scarcity mentality. I want to talk from an attitude of abundance, right? The question was asked from a standpoint of abundance. It wasn't, hey, how do we keep our trainees from becoming our competition? The question on Facebook that I am using as a springboard was, how do we instill loyalty to our trainees? I love that approach. I love that question. And I'm going to share with you a couple of things. Now, some of them are positive and some of them, quite frankly, are negative. Some of them use the carrot and, let's face it, some of them use the stick. Let's start with one of the sticks. And I will just say up front that I've heard multiple times that this is not enforceable. I believe that to a certain degree, though I can tell you that in the state of Idaho, it's a little more enforceable. There are laws in place that say, hey, listen, a contract, a black and white contract, if somebody, claims that they're the victim of abuse, the judge is supposed to go back to the contract. We're talking about NCAs here, folks. We're talking about non-compete agreements here. And I know in some states they may not be held up very well, right? But I have seen multiple times, not in the appraisal world necessarily, but in multiple times in some of my friends who are business owners that had to go through the process of litigating an NCA, somebody who broke an NCA. And honestly, I've seen that it was in favor, that the judge favored the business owner over the individual who broke away and broke that NCA. So I would say that yes, on occasion, sometimes these things don't happen the way that you want them to happen, right? I understand that they may not be enforceable, but let's just start, number one, with an NCA. If nothing else, it gives that individual one more barrier, right? One more hurdle that they would have to overcome in order to break off and quote unquote become your competition. I would start with that. I know it's a negative way to start, right? If you do this, by golly, I'm going to do that. I get it, folks, but it is one thing that's very common in business. And I would suggest if you go into business with somebody, if you're going to put a significant amount of time and energy and effort, blood, sweat, and tears, as they say, into training somebody, that you ought to have something in writing that says, hey, listen, if I'm going to put this in, I expect something in return. And one of the things that I expect in return is that you don't go out and compete against me. By the way, there's another more carrot-like approach to an NCA that I talk about at my dream team quite frequently, and it's called a mandatory buyout. I'm not going to go into the details today for reasons of time, but I talk about it a lot with my dream team, that rather than setting up an NCA, why not approach it from a mandatory buyout situation, meaning you would give somebody an opportunity to buy you out if they choose to quote unquote compete against you rather than going against them on a litigation side of things. Okay. So that's number one. NCAs, I think, should be out there. They should be part of the landscape. That's just what someone is going to expect as they go into a relationship with a mentor. That's number one. Number two, I think this is very, very important. And that is that you approach the relationship from where it needs to be approached from, and that is a human resource or human relationship standpoint. Now, what do I mean by that? Folks, I know it sounds old-fashioned, but I am a believer in the old handshake and look somebody in the eye promise. I really am. And when I bring somebody on, I will meet them in person. I will shake their hand. I will look them in the eye and say, listen, here's our contract, and that's all the legal gobbledygook, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there's an NCA in there, but let's just look each other in the eye and say, listen, I'm here to train you. And I'm hoping that you'll be loyal to me long term. I know it sounds cheesy. I know it sounds old fashioned, folks, but I think there is something to it. And it can't be done in a fake way. It can't be done because Dustin Harris said so on the microphone. It needs to be done genuinely. People will feel whether it's genuine or not. I want you to feel that. I want you to go into a relationship with somebody on a business level. I want you to go into a business relationship with somebody knowing that, hey, this is something that I am giving and something that's being received and vice versa. And we need to just, we need to start with a relationship of trust and loyalty, and moving forward, we need to make sure that everybody understands where we're coming from when it comes to the business relationships that we go into. All right, number three is definitely the most important thing that I'm going to share with you today, and that is treat your employees like you would want to be treated. Treat your employees like you would want to be treated. Pay them well for what they do. Fulfill your promises. Give them the benefits that they would expect to have. Okay. And with that also comes the next step. I'm just going to combine them into one. And that is open up your books. Help them to understand where you're coming from. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Many new appraisers come into this without knowledge of what it takes to run a business. And just to speak plainly, they don't know the difference between gross and net. They just don't. Now, if you ask them, they would say they do, but let's face it. They're looking at A now. They know what those fees are. They know you got $600 for that appraisal and they only walked away with $200 worth. They know that, right? And in their head, they're saying, well, gee, if I did this all by myself, I'd make the whole 600. Now, you and I both know that's not true. You and I both know that's far from the truth, right? But they don't know that. So I think a good quality education and helping them to understand what it takes to run a business. And this is a conversation that I have with all of my commissioned employees, because frankly, most of my commissioned employees make more money. They take home more money than I do on each individual assignment. Now, I take more money home than they do because of the overall assignments of a big company, right? Hopefully you're following me on that. But when it comes down to it and you look at 123 Any Street and we got paid $600 in office, you took home $200, I may have taken home 100, maybe 125. They need to understand that. They need to understand that there is overhead, that I've got other payroll to take care of, that I've got internet bills and MLS bills and E&O insurance to pay for, and on and on and on and on, right? They need to understand that running a business is not as simple as taking and pocketing the $600 that was paid to you from the client. I think that trainees need to understand that, because as they understand that, they will realize that they have it pretty darn good. Not just financially. They take home more money per order than I do, right? But they also don't have to deal with the headaches of running the business like I do. And I think being very open in your communication, when I say open with the books, I don't show them everything, but the little lecture that I just gave you is one that I give all of my commissioned employees, that they understand that they got it pretty darn good. And yes, you can go out on your own, but don't be looking over your shoulder because let's face it, you've got it pretty darn good. In other words, the answer to the individual's question of how do you keep trainees loyal to you comes down to make life good for them. They're not going to leave you if they feel like they have a better situation with you than they would have on their own. And I think it's important for them to understand and share with them what you deal with as a business owner, share with them the angry phone calls that come in, share with them the types of bills and stress that a business owner goes through, right? Not that you're twisting their arm and trying to talk them into staying, but I think in general, education is power. I think knowledge is power. I think understanding where you're coming from will be very beneficial to them long term. Well, folks, that's it. Again, you can do all of these steps and absolutely not have the results that you wish to have. I am not going to stand here on this microphone. And by the way, I am standing at a standing desk today. So I'm not going to stand here on this microphone and tell you that if you follow step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4, that no one will ever leave you. But I am going to say that it's going to reduce the amount of people that leave you. I believe strongly in creating an environment, a healthy environment that is beneficial for everyone that works with you. And as you do so, you will find that more and more are loyal to you. Folks, right now, I just hit a new landmark. As of this recording, as of 2 days ago, I now have 20 people that work for me. Now, it's not all peaches and rainbows, but it's pretty fun. It's pretty cool. We were on a staff meeting on Monday, and just to look at the Zoom meeting where we've got 20 tiles on the screen with people attending that meeting was an awesome, awesome experience. And that comes, folks, from having an amazing environment, an amazing habitat, if you will, for people to work in. Folks, if you want to learn more about this and more things to help your business to succeed, to help your business go to the next level, I highly recommend either one-on-one coaching or the Mastermind. Folks, the Mastermind is an amazing place. I just got back from 2 masterminds as of this recording. Just got back from Salt Lake, where we had 10 people on the couch that day. 10 people spent an hour sharing what they are dealing with in their own business, and we've got another 9 people around the table helping them to become better. It's the coolest thing in the world. Check it out. Go to theappraisercoach.com/memberships and look at the Dream Team Mastermind.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.